Welcome everybody. We've just put the link to our slide deck in the chat, and if you are watching this on the video, it is the bit.ly on the bottom right hand corner of the slide there, and it is case sensitive, so make sure that Canvas and levels are both capitalized so you can get into the slide deck. And this is a slide deck for all of our Canvas training this year, levels 1, 2, and 3. So there'll be a ton of resources in here as we go along. So the three of us are Chris Giles, I'm Carrie Kunert, and Nicole Carter. We are all a part of the digital curriculum team here. We are all TOSAs with the district and helping with Canvas implementation this year. And Chris is our Canvas administrator for the district. And how the session's going to work is, well, I'm doing the intro session structure right now, and we are recording this so people can watch on video at a more convenient time for them. We're going to do this beginning session. We're going to talk all about Canvas discussions today, and we are going to give information. We actually have an expert, an expert in the field out in the classroom using discussions with her students who will be sharing with us. And then we're going to do a Q&A on the topic of discussions. So we'll cover everything that is to know about discussions, and then we'll stop the recording. And then if there are any other Canvas related questions, we'll use the remainder of the time just for an open Q&A. That's okay. And we are actually doing 3 different levels. These are all corresponding to our Canvas agreements to make sure that our district has consistency in how we're utilizing Canvas. And as a parent of a middle schooler, I can see why that is so important when he has multiple classes and how to find everything. So I'm appreciating the consistency for sure. This is a level 2. So we are in level 2, and this is episode number 3, how to use Canvas discussions. So that is the one that we're on, but you can see all of the other ones that we have planned, and they are all in Teacher Source. You can go ahead and register for all the different sessions. And as soon as we finish session 2, we'll be moving on to level 3. So those are to come in 2021, actually. And how it's going to work is if you are here attending the live class, we will be giving you the Teacher Source check-in link. So you can go ahead and get your PDU credits for that. And if you're watching this on video, what we've decided to do is accumulate all of the sessions, all of the classes into one big master course for that level. And when you finish that, you get a whole slew of PDUs to last you for years. So that will be coming as soon as we finish the series. And we're going to go ahead and hop all the way down to slide 21 today. So Canvas discussions, episode 3, all the way down to slide 21. And Canvas discussions were new to me this year, and we keep trying to push teachers to use discussions, and now I completely see why. Especially with remote learning, where you don't have the benefit of being able to have this rich discussion in person. And you can in breakout rooms, but you want wait time and students to really think their answers through. The Canvas discussions is absolutely the way to go. So we're going to be showing you an example of Canvas discussions, walking you through how to create all kinds of details about them, but it really provides a level of collaboration that students can discuss with each other. And I know we don't have that in a number of different platforms. And they can do that not just through text, but through video or through audio responses. So it can really create a really collaborative class atmosphere. It deepens student engagement. And it also gives the ability for students to do peer reviews and give more specific peer feedback. So that part is really powerful. Now, right here we have, and it's linked for you on the slide, these are the SAMR levels, and they go from to the far left, the most simple substitution. You're just replacing technology with something you would have done in the class anyway, all the way up, getting more and more complex. And you'll notice it's got it correlates with the Bloom's words right there beneath. More and more complex is using it for a deeper and deeper purpose. So if we just look, someone took the time to break down Canvas and look at all the different Canvas features and how you can go from the simplest version to the most complex. So they've done it for quizzes and pages and all kinds of things. But since we're talking discussions today, the very most basic level is to give your students a discussion and have them respond to it. Okay, you'll notice in that level, there's no peer interaction. It's basically just a writing prompt or a question and answer from teacher to student. Moving up to the next level is actually requiring students to respond to that and to respond to each other. So there's some peer interaction at the next level. You take it all the way up to the modification level. Now we're talking about including a scoring guide. So students have a sense of what is required from them in order to achieve a certain score, right? A certain proficiency score. And then all the way up to redefinition. And I'm curious how many teachers have gotten to this point. The discussions are student driven, right? So perhaps students generate the original discussion question or prompt, or they are using that maybe as a back channel during a lesson that they are discussing and clarifying for each other, questions during instruction. So that's like a deeper level. So assisting and providing help to other students. So I don't know of anybody who's at that level yet, but something to strive for and something to try for this spring. All right, now Nicole is going to walk us through an example.
Yeah, so and we have an expert in the field that I think has some great examples to show us a little bit later. So I'm just going to show one. We originally were thinking, wouldn't it be great if we had you guys dive in and try it? But since we're doing this both live and recorded, we thought we'd just show you some that have already taken place. I do like the idea, and we've talked about this in previous sessions, of thinking about different class jobs. I know one thing that was always really successful for me when I was doing class discussions with students was maybe pulling a student aside and saying, hey, I'm going to allow you to maybe not answer the original prompt, and you're going to be my hype girl or my hype boy, and you're going to come back in and answer or respond to your peers, or get them to answer to someone else's. Like, hey, Jonah, I noticed that you said such and such, and Ashley said the same thing. You should go check out her post. And so getting kids to kind of respond to their peers in a different way, having your students take on that responsibility or take on that job, can be a great way to get them more engaged with what they're doing. We also have seen a lot of people use sentence stems to get students started, which we're going to show you a little idea of that, and really clear instructions for students as they get going. So one example that I was going to show you is one that was kind of built around some SEL work, but you'll notice we have a clear direction. Watch the video before you answer anything. And then below the video, we actually have step 1, you're going to hit reply. Step 2, you're going to list 3 things that make a good friend. Then you're going to hit post reply, and then come back through to your classmates. And here's some sentence stems for you. I want you to respond to your classmates with, I liked how you did ... So those sentence stems can really be helpful in helping that kind of peer response start to happen. Another thing to think about, and I'm going to come up and hit the edit portion so we can see the back end. As a teacher, a couple of things that I think are really, really helpful is making sure that you click a few of these options, like allowing threaded replies. So for example, if one student responds to another, that reply sits underneath the original post so that it is connected. The other one is hitting this grading option. Now that just allows you as the teacher to open up SpeedGrader. I'm going to do that in just a second. And it will allow you to see, for example, if Ashley responded to the initial prompt, but then also it shows in one view how Ashley might have responded to 2 other peers if that was a part of your instruction. So it just makes it super easy on your end as the teacher to not have to scroll through an intense feed. Even if you're not going to give it an actual number grade, it allows you to be able to go through and see responses by students. And then you have to ask yourself, is this something where I'm going to have the students like each other's responses? You have the ability to turn that on and to turn it off. And I think that there are some reasonings behind why you would turn that on, just in terms of engagement. Now, I did mention that I would go into SpeedGrader, so let me go ahead and do that. And I saw there's a couple of things coming through on the chat. So while I open that up, is there anything you guys would say or that I need to address from the chat?
Well, I'm going to have Holly had shared her experience talking about the redefinition, but when she's going to talk in just a few minutes, and
Yeah.
I totally want Holly to speak to that for sure.
So for instance, I'm in the SpeedGrader option for this, and these are all teacher responses, by the way. They're not student responses, but they were pretending to be students. Now, if I go in and I see, all of the responses that have been turned in, I can start to see when people have actually, and I should have done this ahead of time. I apologize that I haven't. But usually if they've responded to the prompt and then added additional responses to their peers, it would show up here. So in one option, in one view, you as a teacher can see every single time that your students have responded to that particular prompt and discussion thread or responded to their peers.
Hey, I just want to introduce, actually, I'm going to have Holly introduce herself, but when we talked about an expert in the field, Holly is somebody who came to my mind really quickly. She's shared how she uses discussions in multiple courses. And I love the fact that she uses it in math course. Like, to me, that is a huge win in my heart. And so I have a couple questions I want to ask Holly, and then I want Holly to, for sure, to share her screen and share whatever she wants to share. But Holly, I want you to introduce yourself. But before you do that, I just want to ask you one question, and then go ahead and introduce yourself. So Holly, after you introduce yourself, can you share a little bit about your process, about how you create the discussions, and then maybe even how do you assess them? So.
Hi, I'm Holly McNamee. I teach at Sunset High School, and I just realized I left my wired connector out. So if I start to be jarbled or whatever, I'll pause and go get that real quick out of my bedroom. I'm working from home, right? So, but I wanted to say hello. I'm glad you're here. And I teach, right now I'm teaching calculus at Sunset High School. So I teach mainly that higher end math, but I have taught everything from 6th grade through college. And I actually first got exposed to discussions through the college that I teach at. And I teach primarily some of the lower level math classes at the college setting. And so when I kind of saw what kind of inspired me to use discussions was that my adults were really terrible at them. And so I thought that if the adults were terrible at them, I want to make sure my high school students, if they find themselves in an online math class, that they know how to rock these. And so that was kind of my whole motivation for doing this with my students. So it started as I did a take-home assessment. And what it started was that take-home assessment, I just put it on the discussions. And then over time, that kind of became its own animal. And then when we moved to online learning, I still gave grades in the spring because I'm a dual credit class. So I was looking for ways to assess them in the spring in the midst of all this chaos. And discussions became like a hallmark of how I kept them engaged and was able to still offer college credit, even amidst all the COVID. So, so that's where I'm coming from. And so the question was, I think it was how do I design it, and then how do I keep them engaged? Is that what you're looking?
Totally, good question. Yeah.
The number one thing I can offer is go at it with a specific goal in mind. The more specific the goal, the better. That's the primary thing, because if you just try to do everything in your first discussion, you're gonna hate life. So you really want to make sure that you not only a goal in terms of like what you want to do, but also what are you going to expect from your students, and then that takes the shape of that makes the rubric kind of come to life as well. So some things that I normally do. Sometimes I reinforce ideas. If I didn't do an adequate job explaining something, I might try to reinforce it in discussion. Maybe I want to reteach or teach an idea. So again, that adequate, when maybe I didn't do a good job, but maybe I want to reteach it, or perhaps I want to teach an idea. So if it's something they can do on their own, maybe through discovery, that might be a topic I approach. And then maybe I'm going to prep the students for a new idea. I just did that right before Thanksgiving. I used the discussion to prep them for an idea that I'd known other years students had struggled with. And so I decided to take some time to get them ready. And then review is probably the easiest way to do this. These review chains where students just post their own questions and then they help each other in these reviews. I think that's one of the most attainable because it takes the least work from the teacher, but the students tend to really like it. And then I designed that discussion with a goal in mind. And then while you're designing your discussion, how I keep them engaged is I really take the time to make sure my question isn't a right or wrong answer. So it's not something that they're just going to do and be done and check the box, because my rubrics are entirely dependent on them posting their initial post before the 4th day of the week, and they have to come back and comment at least twice, and then they have to come back and reflect. And they can't get a full 4 or perfect score, or however you're grading. They can't get that unless that's over the course of at least 3 days. Because how can you reflect if you just posted an hour ago? That's not reflection, right? Like, you can't do that. So I need you to post before Thursday for me. And then I need you to comment, and you can't, I call it don't post and run, because honestly, those comments are part of your reflection process, looking at other people's work and thinking about what they did and asking questions. That's all part of the reflection process. And then coming in and concluding before the end of the week, which includes revisions if that's what needs to be. So I make it a really important thing for my students to understand that it's not, you don't have to nail it right from the get-go. You don't have to get that question right. You just have to be in the ballpark. And then in fact, if you get it wrong, you're giving your group a lot more time to and information and topics to talk about. You're helping your group if you screw it up, because then everybody has something to talk about, and the mistakes are part of the process. And so I give points for kind of all of those things. And you could do that either in the learning target itself in terms of the content, because showing that you understand an idea, whatever your learning target is, comes from being able to communicate it. So you can give them points or grades in that learning target, and you can also give them grades in whatever their communication target is. So you can kind of give marks in both. And so that's kind of how you can assess. And that's, I do it in, I do one every week right now. Every week we do a discussion that's part of their normal weekly routine. And I use SpeedGrader to grade it. It takes longer than some of my other assignments, but once you kind of get used to what you're looking for, and again, really pinpointing your goals, it makes your grading easier. And then the better you write your topics, the more practice you get, the better your students get at discussions. And then you don't have to really grade them very thoroughly at all, because they're kind of rocking it on their own, and you kind of know what to look for when they're not.
I love this, Holly. So I real quick, we're gonna have some Q&A in a few minutes, but a question I did want to ask you, if you don't mind, do you have a rubric? Do you use the same rubric for each discussion, or do you just share one? Like, how did you get the rubric involved, and do you use it often, or just, hey, this is the rubric I'm using for all of my discussions?
I really believe in consistency in CDL. I feel like the more, when you change things in the classroom, you can make a classroom announcement, right? And all of them are captive, and they're hopefully all listening to you. You can do it right at the beginning of class, and they're all there. But over CDL, I don't know how many of them are hearing it, right? Like, you have pets running around, you have brothers and sisters, you have mom and dad coming in and out. I don't know that they're hearing everything I tell them. So I hate changing things on them. I like to be super, super, super consistent. So absolutely the same rubric consistently. I do not change it. And because I'm pretty far into it, I don't really need to change it. I think I did change it once in the spring, because I took the rubric I had been using, it, adapted it for CDL, realized I needed to adjust some things. So like right after the first test that we did in CDL, I told them, oh, hey, by the way, this is changing. And I kind of gave them some time. And I think I gave them like a 1 week, just so you know, you messed this up and I need you to fix this for next week, but I won't take any points off, kind of a thing. But yes, same rubric. And it makes it handy because when I make my discussions, I actually have a template, and that rubric is attached to the template. So all I have to do is duplicate the discussion, go back in, change out all the things, and the rubric is just attached, and I don't have to think about it.
That's what I was going to ask you, is if you did. I figured you did, but I just wanted to make sure. So you do attach the rubric to the discussion, so the students are aware of what they're, well, not only being assessed on, but what are the expectations of keeping that. And again, we're going to have some Q&A in a second, but one question I really wanted to ask you, and I felt like you would probably have a great answer, is what do you do? There are some students who are going to hold back and who are maybe not going to get in that discussion or get engaged. So do you have something that you do to kind of help to basically make sure that all students are engaged in those discussions?
Well, first it's creating the culture and my calculus kids have a really hard time with this being wrong, especially when I first get them. So it's this idea of creating the culture of not only, again, can you be wrong and still get a perfect score? Honestly, you're helping everybody out by being wrong, because now people have something to talk about authentically, because that's really my goal, authentic mathematical communication. And so there's getting them past that. And that's usually the first thing. And then also, you can put something in your rubric about, I don't really have a problem with it right this second, but when I get them into my first year, I loop with my kids. So I've had them for 2 years. That's kind of where I'm coming from right now. But when I first get them in the first level of calculus, I have a whole line of my rubric that is about professional communication that also is cordial and friendly and nice, and making sure that we're not being really rude to our classmates when they make a mistake. And sometimes that takes a little bit of effort. Again, with these really smart, bright kids, sometimes they get right to the point. They're mathematically minded, and they don't want to be friendly or find good ways to kind of couch their criticisms, constructive criticisms, to make it better. So that's another thing. And then really just making the rubric really explicit, and the prompt really explicit. This is what you need to post. You need to post at least twice, right? And then you need to also post a conclusion. That's a minimum of 4 posts. And so they can't physically get that 4 or that 3 or whatever, however you've structured your rubric. They can't get there unless they truly take the time to post over several days. And then another thing you can do right now, because the kids know each other since it's their second year in this kind of cohort, but in the beginning, you can give them a base group, so they're always communicating with the same people, and that will help alleviate some of the, oh, I don't want to be embarrassed, because at least it's the same group. And then if something does go wrong, you can trade kids, and so now that kid has a fresh start if that's what's needed, right? So there's ways to kind of help them engage in a way that they feel safe.
Awesome. Do you I'm gonna stop asking questions, and we're gonna have Q&A right now, but while our friends who are here hanging out with us today are getting ready for their questions, do you feel comfortable sharing your rubric? Is that something that you could share on screen?
Yeah, I can. Just warning, it's not in standards-based grading. It's in a college grading. So
okay
just
with that.
know that
Rubric
you're not
is a
looking
rubric. We're okay with that. And then while Holly's pulling it up, if you have any questions, friends, this is right. Nicole and Carrie, are we okay with our Q&A now? Okay.
I also have a few discussion topics handy that you said you wanted me to have ready to go. So I can share my screen. All right. Okay, so this is how I structure my discussions. I would not structure my discussions this way for an AGS class. I would not structure it this way for a kindergarten class or a first grade class, or whatever's appropriate in terms of a way to enter them, right? Whether or not you're requiring a video post or a written post, those are all kind of accommodations you can make for your students. And just know that these are kids that have been doing discussions for a year plus now, right? Like they are well practiced with these discussion topics. So in this discussion, I like to give them a little summary. My kids are honor students, so reading language isn't really an issue with them, and I'm kind of prepping them for that college setting. So mine are probably a little bit more wordy than I would use for all groups. But what I have kind of narrowed into is kind of this three-prong initial post, comments, conclusion, because as brilliant as they are, sometimes they do struggle with exactly what they should be commenting on and what I'm looking for. So I try to give them that information. And then I give them an initial topic. I tell them exactly how I want them to comment. Sometimes it's more general. In this case, it was more specific, and then conclusion. And so just to give you an idea of, these are kind of not, they're not sequential, but they're close. This was discussion 4. So this was week 4 in the quarter 1. And that we did discussions, I should say. And what I had students do is go back through their suggested homework problems and post one for the classmates to do. And I wanted them to really think about what they were struggling with. And the reason I wanted to show you this, because it was kind of, go find one, easier one for me to write. But I had it easier to write because the next week I completely developed a discussion based on the biggest problem that they said they had. So discussion 4, I not only gave them something to talk about, and I gave them a way to review and think and all those other things. I used that data to develop week 5 because they said word problems. almost without fail, word problems. So I took the next week and I spent way too much time writing some pretty extensive word problems for what they were working on. It took hours, but it doesn't have to. I just was an overachiever that week, and then I really regretted it the following weeks. But then in week 8, this was about having the students try these various different problems, and then the goal of this was there's different ways to do it, and I wanted them to see the different ways. So one person posted their way, the commenters were supposed to explain different ways. And don't let the signs scare you. That's all that happened. They know what they were doing. And then in this week, this was about prepping. The kids, these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the kids have a really hard time with these. So all I wanted them to do was to do this thing that prepped them for a future thing. And then here, notice the comments was just review the group members. I didn't give them specific topics to do. I didn't give them specific things. I just wanted them to review each other's work, partially because sine and cosine are similar, and 4 and 5 were similar, and I wanted them to make those connections. And then this is what we're doing this week. There's a couple different ways to integrate numerically, and I'm having them try those 2 things. I'm tying something that they did last school year into what they're doing now. So and this is more of a discovery, right? Like I didn't explicitly teach this, but I've taught them all the things they need to know to do it. So I'm kind of, rather than taking class time to do this assignment, I'm having them do it in discussion because they can. So, and the rubric that I use every time, I'm going to show you the rubric. You can get there by clicking those 3 dots. You definitely want to teach your kids this if they don't know how to do this part, because my adults in college cannot find the rubric to save their life. And it drives me crazy because I take points every week for really silly things that I shouldn't. So show the rubric. And this is my rubric that I've developed over time. And it's, again, wordier than I would use with all groups for sure. It's just what I use with my Calc kids because they're well trained, but I would make it much more student friendly language, much shorter, much more pinpointed for various groups that might need more scaffolding. This is the initial post, demonstrates basic understanding. They get full score. This would probably be like a 4, right? If they posted by Thursday and they took their time to do it. It can be wrong. They just put an effort and posted by Thursday. And then well presented happens when they are posting it late, or they don't really give adequate effort, in my opinion. Adequately presented and partially presented, or as it stands. Then the next level would be student progresses to understanding and accuracy. That's the idea. So you didn't get it right at first, but by the end of the week, you've come to an understanding, you know where you're at. And that's where I look for reflection. I expect all of my students to reflect at the end of the week. But for a 4, I really want to see them engage in like a mini reflection. Like someone says, hey, you forgot a negative or whatever. And they post back to that person, showing that they're thinking about their work throughout the week. That's a 4. A 3 means I just reflected at the end of the week. I met expectations. Student actively participates in the discussion. I'm looking for 2 comments over the course of the week. And I want to see it not at Sunday night at 7 o'clock, because at Sunday night at 7 o'clock, their classmates have turned their computer off. You haven't participated in a discussion. I tell them it's like going to a party when everybody's left the party and you're talking to an empty room. That's not a conversation. I want a conversation. So I want to see comments before Sunday night too, right? They can make them on the same day. That's okay, but I want to see engagement over several days, meaning they may have made the comments on the same day, but they come back and interact more later. And then I do academic convention. This is a big thing for me because I'm training these kids to be mathematical writers. I want to see it typewritten. I want to see sources cited as necessary, and I want to see them using an equation editor. That might not be something I require for all groups because that equation editor can be kind of problematic at times and takes a little bit of work. But for me, that's one of my goals with my kids. And so that's something that could be modified to whatever your communication goal is for your kids, however that looks for them. Is that it, Chris? Is that enough?
Yeah, that was legit. And I know that some of our friends here are elementary, so yeah, just like Holly mentioned, like she would adapt this for her learning groups and stuff. and I don't know if it's possible, and you can say no, because I'm going to stop. I mean, I want people to ask questions, but the powerful thing about the rubric is being able to use in SpeedGrader. I don't know if we can show SpeedGrader without showing students' names, so I don't really, you could hit stop sharing if you want to, Holly, and just see, is it possible you can show the SpeedGrader with the rubric? Because that's really also the benefit to the rubric as well. And then if anybody has any questions for Holly, I love that you shared this. This is great, really great.
I can pull up a SpeedGrader and not show the names. I just need to find one student who didn't put anybody's names
Yeah,
in it.
because I think that the true benefit for people who have not used the rubrics in SpeedGrader is the click, click, click. Like that to me is like, not only is the rubric robust and great information for the students, but for the teacher, it makes life easier.
Yes, so I'm gonna pull one up. Just give me a second,
Yeah.
because I need to make sure their names are all hidden. And the moment I start Zoom, Canvas slows way down.
Yeah.
So
Does anybody have any questions for Holly, or even questions about discussions that you would like to ask? So
I'm just wondering if anybody has like really good elementary ways to use it. I'm thinking off the top of my head, like it might be a good, I give assignments attached to read aloud in order to kind of have some engagement and accountability. So I'm thinking maybe this would be a good way to shift to discussions instead of assignments.
what grade level?
Thoughts? Oh, fifth grade.
So I mean, I'm a mom. I have a ninth and a 10th grader, so fifth grade isn't that far away. But I'm sure my fifth grader was all about making videos. And so that if you wanted to do some kind of either video or even a hybrid video, like
it either be really funny to watch or really painful to watch. Go either way.
Yeah, my fifth grade, I remember my when they were in sixth grade, an extra credit assignment for their math class was to make like a helping video that their teacher could use, and they thought that was awesome. And so videos would be my first thing as a way to engage students that might not. And if you want them to write, I sentence frames would be, I liked what I think it was Nicole shared with the elementary 3 ways to be a friend, just super detailed.
And I was going to say, if we had enough time, but I'm not sure we will, I had an example from a middle school teacher, Danette Foster, out at Conestoga, where she has been doing book bentos. I don't know if you've ever heard of a book bento, but it's an especially good option for CDL. And the idea is that the kids set up what's called a flat lay. If you've ever seen anything on Instagram where you see a very artistically organized thing on a table that you're taking a downward shot on, and I can open up and share my screen, but basically you tell a student, go grab a book that you're currently reading, and I want you to devise a book bento, a flat lay, where you grab objects that remind you of the characters in the book, the setting of the book, and lay those out and take a picture for me and respond in the discussion thread. So it's a lot harder for us to do that, I think, when we're face to face, but in CDL, it's a lot easier for students to go around the house, go outside, and grab different things that could work or fit with the book that they're currently reading. And if you go ahead and do a search in the Commons for book bento, Danette has shared, I think, at least 2 of her discussions with lots of really great examples that you could import and modify to make it work for your grade level. So it's called book bentos. But that's a great way, that's multimodal, different, something different to get the kids engaged and to respond, maybe where it's not just, text typing, because you can allow them to respond with photos.
Hey, Chris, I have some with first names, partially because the kids, well, I can explain why. Do you think it's fine if I just have their first names?
I think it's fine. Yeah. And I think just like even just a 30-second, like this is what that SpeedGrader rubric looks like. That's really what we want to see for sure.
All right. So I'm going to show you this one. I like this one because it has a few different things that they're doing. So this is what the SpeedGrader looks like. This has already been graded. This was discussion 10. So I graded this like right before Thanksgiving. And so when you grade, it looks like this, and I literally just click, 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 click through, right? And and press of the button, it counts it for you. You do have to make sure when you set up the rubric, there's this tiny box below the rubric that says use this rubric for grading. If you don't check that box, when you click and it adds it up, that number, that 100 out of 100 should end up, when I save, it should end up right there. And if you don't click that stupid little box, it won't work. And it took me several tries before I realized that's what I had done wrong. So, so just know that that's it. But once you do it, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to tally it up. With standards-based grading, you want to think about how points would translate to a 4, 3, 2, 1. But that, I think I've done that with AGS3 when I use these with AGS3. And so that can be done. But this student, my kids are pretty well trained because they know that when I'm looking through, I can't really see their who they're writing to. I don't have the context of what's happening. So they kind of help me out by saying like a salutation, so I know who they're talking to. I have an idea of what they're doing. So their initial post, they did it on a Google Doc and embedded that, which is a legal move depending on the grade level that you want to. They can upload attachments and all those things. And then I see their first reply, and then I saw the second reply. Great job on your initial post. So I know that they're commenting. Like, they're kind of trained to give me that information, because that helps me grade. This person really wrote a lot. And then great job on your initial post. And then keep further down. And then they're commenting to other people, and then they tell me like, this is my conclusion, and then they type that on a Google Doc. So I like this because I did show you that they have the option of either embedding or uploading anything that they want for the discussion, and then kind of gives you an idea of how quickly it goes through. This was 100%. I probably spent 5 or 10 seconds on this assignment once I actually started grading it, because at this point I know what I'm looking for, and I know the kids, and so like I know where it would be, and there's ways to kind of make that grading go faster throughout.
Well, and I saw, as you were kind of pointing out, that it's a boop, boop, boop on the rubric. I think I saw like Michelle's face go, what? And I can't tell you enough that utilizing rubrics within Canvas becomes a game changer. As a secondary language arts person, grading essays can take upwards of 20 to 25 hours worth of your time for one single essay. So when you figure out how to use these rubrics and you have them set up, you can cut that down to 5 hours of grading, which I know still sounds like a lot, but it's a game changer for those of us that have to do that kind of grading. So as I said in the chat, we'll be talking about rubrics, how to set up rubrics and get going with rubrics on December 16th. So that's coming up this month. If you want to kind of jot that, save the date.
I don't have an assignment of any sort in Canvas without a rubric anymore. Even if it's a stupid, really simple rubric that's just for me, right? The kids aren't really like, every single assignment that I give of any nature, discussion or otherwise, always has a rubric attached.
Awesome. All right, any questions or answers regarding discussions? And if not, then we can just open up for all questions and answers regarding Canvas as well. So,
is there a spot, Chris, and maybe it's on that slide deck, like, so 5th grade elementary, never done a discussion before. So does it walk me through like what exactly in Canvas am I clicking to add? Like, I know how to make an assignment, but I don't know how to make a discussion.
Let me double check. I'm pretty sure if I don't have it on there, I'll make sure I put it on there today as far as the actual steps. I have one that says how do I create. So on slide 21, how do I create Canvas discussions? And it'll take you right through. The great thing about the Canvas community and the Canvas guides is it'll take you for the first step. And then when you're done reading the instructions, you click next and you can go to the next part of instructions. It might say, because when you're doing a Canvas, like Nicole mentioned earlier, like I can do graded or non-graded, and kind of like Holly mentioned, like I have intentionality of using this discussion. So not everything has to be graded. Although the power of grading is, I get to see and speak it or so. But yeah, I have a link on slide 21. How do I create Canvas discussions? Holly brought in groups, which is another aspect another level up of using it in Canvas. And that's something we're going to be sharing. I think we get into like level 3 as well. So,
well, and
Yeah,
Kristen, if you've downloaded the writing unit that Carrie and I wrote for what unit was it? Unit 1 for 4th and 5th grade. we start in the writing unit with a very like intro discussion thread, and we build the skills throughout that unit. So if you imported that from the Commons, whether you used it or not, you could go through that in a sandbox course and see how we kind of gradually built those skills and just duplicate that.
Okay.
one thing that Chris mentioned was about the groups coming later. I will warn you that if you make your discussions too big and too many people post, Canvas will crash. So I might have just been my kids, because my kids are ferocious communicators and we used a lot of like equation editor and whatnot. But I made the mistake of doing a review. So, and I thought, oh, I'm going to include everybody because it'll be great. That was one of the worst discussions we had, because about 5 days in, Canvas was unusable for that discussion. And so then I was like, okay, well, I'll just break them up by sections. And I had 4 sections of calc. So I thought, oh, I'll give everybody their own, and even a full section crashed Canvas towards the end of the week. So I strongly recommend groups of probably no bigger than 15 to 20, depending on how ferocious like your kids are communicating. Because if they do a lot of posting, like mine sometimes do, Canvas, the discussion will just have a hard time keeping up.
and for elementary, probably less of an issue because you might have 30 students.
Yeah.
Middle school, high school, like Holly, you probably have more than 150 students, obviously, in all of those courses, right? So, yeah. So definitely, I think it's a good idea if you're middle school or high school and you're looking at 150 to 180 students, you could break those discussions into small groups, which is just more manageable. I think a student might respond in a smaller group than, oh my gosh, all 150 of my peers read my response, kind of thing. So I just added those links to Kristen as well on slide 21. How do I create discussions? How do I create discussions, and how do my students reply? So just 2 quick links there. So, any other questions for Q&A for Holly? If not, we'll open it up for all Q&A as well regarding Canvas or anything else in life, I guess.